Ava, 13, sorts mail beside her mom in a cramped Miami flat, tracing routes on torn envelopes. One night, she sketches a pattern no professor saw. Laughed off as a dumb male kid, she's dared to fix $1 billion flaw. Her lamp burns late. Her mom, Edna, sleeps in the corner. A model forms. A silence falls. But will anyone believe a girl who only delivers mail? The hallway lights buzzed overhead, flickering like they couldn't decide if they were on or off. Ava's footsteps were soft against the cracked tile, her school bag slung loose over one shoulder. It was nearly 6 p.m., and the sun outside dipped behind the high rises, casting a faint orange glow across the windows of their Miami apartment. Inside, the air was thick with warmth, the old fan clacking in rhythm. The walls were lined with boxes, envelopes, labels, old route maps, each one a leftover from her mom's job. Their kitchen table doubled as a sorting station, stacked with parcels marked fragile a rush or return to sender. Hi, Ma, Ava said, dropping her bag near the couch. Her mother, Elena, was sitting cross-legged on the floor, sorting a new batch of letters. Her USPS polo shirt was faded, the logo barely visible. She looked up and smiled, tired. Dinner's in the fridge. I made that macaroni you like? Ava nodded, but didn't move toward the kitchen. Instead, she sat on the floor beside her mom, picking up a crumpled envelope and smoothing it against her knee. You don't have to help tonight, Elena said. You've got homework. I finished it, Ava replied. Besides, I like this better. She reached for a pencil stub and began tracing the inked zip codes on the envelopes, connecting lines in her head. Her eyes flicked between packages, her fingers sketching invisible maps in the air. Look, she said suddenly, these 4 addresses, they're all in the same building, but they got routed through different centers. Elena chuckled softly. That's the system, baby. Don't try to make sense of it. But it doesn't make sense, Ava murmured. If you combine the drop-offs, Ava, Elena's voice was firm now. It's just the way it is. Ava didn't argue. She reached into the pile, grabbed a stack of worn envelopes, and quietly started sketching patterns on the back of each one. That night, after her mom had gone to bed, Ava sat at the kitchen table with nothing but a flickering desk lamp, a plate of untouched macaroni, and a growing sea of recycled mail. She mapped routes using thread and thumbtacks on a corkboard they had found in the trash months ago. She marked delays, crossed out redundancies, and redrew paths with her broken pencil. One envelope stood out. Its barcode had been misread twice, rerouted 5 times, arriving 20 days late. Ava stared at it. This, she whispered, isn't just random. She reached for another, then another. Her heart pounded. There was a pattern, and the pattern was broken. By the end of the week, Ava had repurposed nearly every envelope they had. Her diagrams now reached the floor. She sketched faster than she could explain, driven by something she didn't fully understand. But she felt it, and then it happened. Her mom came home early, her uniform was stained, and her lips pressed tight. They cut my hours, Elena said softly. Starting Monday, I'm part-time. Budget issue. Ava blinked. Because of the delays? She asked. Elena nodded. They say the routes are too slow. wasteful. Management's bringing in outside consultants to optimize the system. But Ava looked at her piles of sketches. They're the ones who made it like that. Elena sank into a chair. Doesn't matter now, we'll manage. Ava walked to her room in silence. She closed the door, then locked it. She sat on the floor with her envelopes and her corkboard and her string. She stared at the chaos and then began tearing pieces of paper, rearranging the parts, building something new. Not just a map, a model. Her fingers trembled as she taped the last root into place. Her breath caught. "I think I fixed it," she whispered. Then louder, "Mom, come here. Look what I found." Elena opened the door, rubbing her temples. "It's just mail, sweetheart." "No," Ava said. "It's not." She pointed to the model, her voice steady. "If the system followed this, your route would take half the time. They wouldn't need consultants. They just need to listen." Elena stared at the wall of paper, unsure. Ava held up one of the torn envelopes, now marked in red ink. "This is what broke it." And then, lifting another, one that formed the core of her new model, "This is how we fix it." Ava stood at the edge of the room, clutching her bundle of repurposed envelopes like armor. Her mom had convinced her to come, just a small logistics workshop at the local community college, open to the public, no fees, no expectations. The room buzzed with casual chatter, folding chairs, whiteboard with faded markers, a projector wheezing in the corner. Professor paced at the front. Dr. Halverson, visiting from Harvard, tall gray suit, sharp voice. Ava didn't know what she expected from Harvard, but he looked like a man who hadn't waited in line for anything in years. "This postal optimization issue," he said, drawing a shaky curve on the board, "is not just about speed. It's a failure of prediction. The system should have anticipated inefficiencies." A student raised a hand. "Didn't they run simulations already?" "They did," Halverson replied, "but they failed miserably. Millions lost, routes delayed, and now Harvard's being asked to consult. Again." Ava's breath caught. Postal, optimization, delays. She stepped closer. "Do we know what broke?" another voice asked. Halverson shook his head. "The data's scattered. Routing protocols from 2009 were layered with predictive AI from 2022. It's a technical mess." He paused. "But here's the real problem. Someone's modeling error is causing a recursive loop. Deliveries keep being routed through the same node chains over and over." A few chuckled nervously. One student asked, "So how do we solve it?" Halverson crossed his arms. "You don't. Not unless you want to spend the next 6 years digging through broken code and federal contracts." The room went silent. Ava's hands tightened on the envelopes in her arms. Her voice came out soft, unsure. "Maybe it's not the code." The professor looked up, annoyed. "Excuse me?" Ava froze. "I just mean, maybe it's the model, the assumptions." Halverson squinted. "And you are?" "I'm Ava," she said, straightening. "My mom works delivery. I help her sort." Laughter broke out in the back row. Halverson didn't laugh. "Let me guess. You think you can fix what a research team of 9 failed to understand?" Ava's face burned. She stepped forward anyway, reaching into her stack. She pulled out the misrouted envelope from part 1, creased, scribbled, but marked with red ink and thread. This kept looping between centers. It was read wrong once, but the algorithm never corrected it. It re-entered the same chain 5 times. That's anecdotal, someone said. Ava didn't flinch. But I mapped 40 more just like it. Halverson walked toward her, lips tight. He looked down at her pile of envelopes like someone inspecting debris. Where did you study modeling? I didn't, Ava said. I just watched my mom come home late every night. I tracked what made her slower. Then I built a new path. Halverson raised an eyebrow. And you used envelopes? Ava nodded. And thread. He turned back to the whiteboard. For a second, he said nothing. Then loud enough for all to hear. I'm not here to humor hobbyists. He tapped the board with a dry marker. This is Harvard's problem, not yours. Leave theory to the trained minds. Ava's throat tightened, but her feet didn't move. She held out her envelope again. Just look, please. Halverson stared at her, then snatched the paper, glancing at the markings. This looks like a child playing connect the dots, he muttered. He tossed the envelope onto the table. Then he turned. Fine. You think you can fix it? Prove it. Ava blinked. What? You heard me, he said. Harvard's system is broken. If you think you're smarter than the 9 of us, take the data. Show us your genius. The room fell still. If you fail, he said, don't come back. The projector hummed. Ava swallowed. Her mom, sitting quietly in the back row, stood slowly. Her voice wavered. She's 13. Halverson didn't even turn around. Then she'll fail fast. That night, Ava sat alone in the apartment, the broken envelope in one hand, her mother's layoff notice in the other. The corkboard loomed across from her. Strings hung limp. Thumbtacks glinted like tiny stars. She lit her desk lamp and began again. The lamp buzzed overhead, casting soft gold across the table, cluttered with envelopes, paper scraps, thread, and half-eaten crackers. Ava sat cross-legged, a blanket around her shoulders, her breath fogging slightly from the cracked window behind her. The air outside was Miami wet, thick, humming with late buses and tired footsteps. But in here, the only sound was pencil on paper. Ava held a sharpened stub of lead, tracing the loops of her newest design. The envelope in her hand was marked with red circles, some smudged from sweat. She leaned in, her fingers tapping each node. Center E, then G, then H, but they rerouted it through C again, she whispered. Why? That's 2 hours wasted. She pulled a paperclip from the pile and connected it between 2 pins on her corkboard model. The thread zigzagged, then paused at a tangle of colored lines. It's not random, she murmured. It's reacting, but it's reacting wrong. The room tilted in her mind, routes dancing, time folding in on itself. Her fingers tapped faster, threading through possibilities. Suddenly she paused, her eyes narrowed. I've been thinking about it backwards. She reached under the table, pulling out a flattened cereal box. On its brown side, she began sketching. Not paths, but choices. Not deliveries, but delays. What if the system isn't a map, but a living guess? She drew circles for decision nodes, squares for constraints, a jagged line for uncertainty. The pencil broke mid-curve. She didn't stop. Ava grabbed a marker and continued drawing, even as the ink bled into the soft cardboard. Her lines thickened. Her thoughts sharpened. The door creaked. Her mother peeked in, rubbing her eyes. Ava, it's almost 2 a.m. Ava didn't look up. Mom, what if I'm not solving a route? What if I'm solving a brain? Elena blinked. What? This system, it's not just broken, it's learning wrong. Like a person who was taught the wrong way to deliver something. So every time it tries again, it's using the wrong memory. Elena walked in slowly, wrapping a shawl around her. I don't get all the details, baby, but I see how you look when you're close to something. Ava smiled faintly. Her mom sat down beside her. You used my old cereal box, she said, gently touching the cardboard. It was the biggest flat surface I had, Ava replied. She held it up like a blueprint. I think I can teach the system to forget its bad habits, not just reroute. Unlearn? Her mother's voice softened. How? I reverse it. Make it watch the outcomes, not the input. Like punishing the wrong guesses. Elena chuckled. Sounds like parenting. Ava laughed quietly. Exactly. Then her eyes lit up. What if it punishes repeat loops? It could reassign confidence scores. A route that loops too often gets deprioritized. She jumped up, knocking over the envelope pile. Wait, wait. She grabbed her mom's old receipt book from the kitchen drawer. Ripped pages flew. She tore strips, wrote timestamps on one side, node IDs on the other. She laid them across the floor like dominoes. A route began to form. C to G, G to H. Loop. Red ink slashed across the loop. Then, alternate path. C to F, F to H. No loop. She smiled. That's it. I can score the paths. Elena watched, puzzled but proud. You really think this could help? Ava looked up. I don't just think, I see it. The light flickered. Her pencil was gone. The marker dried, but the cereal box now held a system, and the receipt slips lay like footprints, evidence of a different way forward. Ava whispered, It's not the tools, it's the pattern. Outside, a mail truck passed, tires hissing on wet pavement. Ava stared at the envelope, still stuck with red thread. You messed up 5 deliveries. But now, you're showing me how to fix 1,000. She taped it to the wall, right next to the cereal box. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel small. She felt necessary. The lecture hall echoed with footsteps and low murmurs. Rows of students filled the seats, coffee in one hand, phones in the other. At the front, Dr. Halverson scribbled on the board. The words adaptive optimization model loomed large in blue ink. Ava sat alone in the back. Her mom's USPS badge hung from her neck, a nervous habit. In her hands, the cereal box diagram was folded like a secret map. She didn't speak. She watched. She waited. Halverson cleared his throat. Today, we'll review the failure of recursive protocols in real-world delivery systems, specifically the case involving the U.S. Postal Service. A few students chuckled. One of our audience members, he said with a glance to the back row, has recently offered a solution. Heads turned. Ava gripped the cereal box tighter. She claims the issue isn't code, but logic, a memory error, a thinking mistake. Laughter broke out across the middle row. One student whispered, "Isn't she that mail girl?" Another added, "What? She fix it with duct tape and lunch receipts?" Halverson raised a hand for silence, but his smirk lingered. "Well, let's see it." Ava stood, nerves buzzing through her knees. She walked slowly to the front, unrolling the cereal box and laying it flat on the desk. The cardboard was warped, marker lines bleeding from the night before. Her receipt slips were taped into columns labeled with loops and corrections. She cleared her throat. "This is a weighted behavior map. I scored repeat loops and lowered their path priority. It teaches the system to avoid failure by unlearning, not just rerouting." A pause. One student snorted. "That's not a model. That's arts and crafts." Ava blinked, but kept going. "It uses consequence-based scoring. Sort of like, if you make the same mistake 5 times, you stop trusting your memory." "That's not how machine learning works," someone called out. "But it's how humans work," Ava shot back. "And the system's acting more like a stubborn person than a smart one." Halverson tilted his head. "Let me get this straight," he said. "You're suggesting Harvard engineers missed something that you, a child with paper scraps, figured out?" Ava's voice wavered. "I didn't plan to. I just saw it." Silence, then sharp. "And what makes you qualified to see anything?" That question cut. She looked down at her taped slips, the jagged ink, the recycled envelope with the original loop scribbled in red. Her fingers trembled. She almost walked away. Almost. Then a voice came from the doorway. "She's qualified," it said. Everyone turned. It was Professor Monroe, older, soft-spoken, glasses sliding down her nose. She held a cup of tea and a faded folder. "She found a recursive trap I missed," Monroe said plainly. "Her output on center G matches the error log from last month." Halverson blinked. "You're saying her serial box is correct?" Monroe stepped forward. "I'm saying it's functional." The room buzzed with murmurs. Ava swallowed. "She used recycled paper, Halverson," Monroe added, "because no one gave her access to a whiteboard." The smirk faded. "Still," a student called out, "so what? She's still just a mail kid." Ava turned to the room, her voice low but steady. "My mom used to get home 2 hours late because of those bad routes. She never complained. She just kept delivering." She lifted the envelope with the red loop, creased, scarred, but cleanly marked. "This envelope helped me see what your software couldn't. So yeah, I used tape. But I found something, and you laughed?" She paused. "But I won't stop." For a moment, no one moved. Then Monroe walked over, placed the folder beside Ava's model, and nodded. "You might want to run her data through your simulations," she said to Halverson, "because if she's right, we've been optimizing the wrong thing." A hush fell across the room. Ava looked at her box again, her envelope, her taped receipts. They weren't garbage. They were proof. The hallway outside the seminar room buzzed with low voices. Ava stood alone, back pressed to the wall, her folder of diagrams clutched tight to her chest. The recycled cereal box, now creased and covered in fresh annotations, was inside, along with her thread diagrams, her revised scoring chart, and the envelope marked in red. She stared at the door across from her. Inside, the Harvard team was reviewing the system logs. Professor Monroe had said she'd fight for Ava's model to be tested, but Halverson had other plans. The door opened with a sharp click. He stepped into the hallway, arms crossed. "Follow me," he said. Ava hesitated. He didn't wait. She followed him down 2 corridors, past offices, lined with awards and names she didn't recognize. They stopped at a small room with glass walls and a single table inside. A projector was set up. A digital interface glowed under a screen. He gestured to the chair. "Sit." Ava did. He dropped a flash drive on the table. Inside is the full route data set, real time, 30 regions, 47 nodes per route. Her hands twitched slightly. "I thought Monroe gave you a spotlight," he cut in. "But Harvard deals in proof." He leaned in. "So here's the challenge. Fix the error your way, with your model." He paused. "But you get one shot, one simulation. If it fails, you walk, and you don't come back." Ava blinked. Her voice cracked. "Why?" "Because this isn't a game at Byte," he said. "This is federal-level logistics, and I won't let some girl with a cereal box waste our time twice." Her chest tightened, but she looked up slowly. "I'll show you." He raised an eyebrow. "Then start. You have until 7 p.m. He checked his watch. "That's 3 hours." He turned and left. The door clicked shut behind him. Ava stared at the drive. Her hand hovered, then reached for her backpack. She pulled out the worn envelope with the loop. She laid it beside the laptop. Then came the thread diagram, the scoring sheet, the taped receipts. She whispered to herself, 3 hours is enough. She plugged in the drive. The data set opened, columns of zip codes, timestamps, flags, thousands of lines. Ava scrolled, eyes darting, scanning for known errors. She marked the recurring paths. Center E, center C, center G, loop, loop, loop. She pulled her revised map forward and began cross-referencing the behavior scores. Route 11 scored high confidence, but it looped. She adjusted the confidence multiplier, reweighted the path. She pressed Run Test. The simulation began. Nodes lit up on the map. Green for optimized, red for delay. 3 minutes passed. The red zones began to fade. 15 minutes. 70% optimization. Her heart pounded. She leaned back, scribbled new adjustments. Every failed node now triggered a weight penalty in her model. The second test ran smoother. Less hesitation, fewer recursions. She looked at the clock. 6:28 p.m. She had 32 minutes left. She reached into her bag, found the pencil stub with the bite mark, one she'd used that first night at the kitchen table. She tapped it against the desk like a metronome. The third simulation. This was it. She hit run. This time, she watched. All 47 nodes, every route. No red, only green. She blinked. The program tallied the results. Total delay reduction, 91%. Ava exhaled, slow, shaking. She printed the summary, highlighted the route scores, stapled it to her model notes, then added one last thing. She took the red-marked envelope and wrote on the back in thick marker, "The loop stops here." At 6:58 p.m., the door opened again. Halverson stood there. "Well?" Ava held out the packet, the envelope on top. He took it, glanced at the summary, read, reread. Then his lips tightened, but he said nothing. He turned and walked. Ava stayed in the chair, hands in her lap, her eyes on the broken pencil now rolled halfway across the table. She didn't move. She didn't smile. She waited. The apartment was quiet, except for the low hum of the fridge and the ticking clock above the sink. Ava sat down bad at the kitchen table, shoulders hunched, eyes fixed on the glowing screen of the borrowed laptop. The room smelled faintly of rice and burned toast. Her mom lay on the couch behind her, still in uniform, shoes off, one arm draped over her eyes. The exhaustion never left. It just shifted places. Ava blinked hard. The simulation was running again. Route 14, still spiking at node F. She groaned softly and pushed her fingers into her hair. The pencil stub sat beside her, chewed down to the wood, worn from nights just like this. The cereal box model was taped to the wall now, notes hanging from push pins. Her receipt trails covered the fridge door. This was her lab, and she wasn't giving up. She leaned closer to the screen. The route was optimized, but too rigid. The algorithm still favored paths that repeated in high-traffic zones. It needed flex, adaptive hesitation, she called it. A pause in decision-making based on fatigue in the data. She opened her scoring formula and rewrote the core line. If confidence drops below 0.6 after 2 loops, reroute to lowest traffic node with no prior history. She hit save, test run. The screen blinked, green, green, amber, then green again. She smiled, not perfect, but breathing. Behind her, Elena stirred. "Baby," she whispered, "you're still up?" "Yeah," Ava said softly, "just one more test." Her mom sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. "You need sleep." Ava shook her head. "You need rest more." Elena looked at her for a long moment, then stood, walked over, and placed a hand on Ava's back. "You're doing this for us, huh?" Ava didn't answer. She just reached for a new envelope and started mapping again. The next morning, Ava sat alone in the public library, the same cereal box tucked under her arm, now covered in layers of tape and sticky notes. She had permission to use the computer lab until noon. The simulation dashboard flickered open again. This time, she focused on rural zip codes, routes her mom used to complain about. 15 miles for one package, she used to say, then double back because the scanner rerouted late. Ava pulled up the archived delivery logs. She noticed something strange. Some addresses appeared twice in 2 hours. She squinted. No, not twice. She clicked open the raw metadata. The same package scanned 2 different ways. She gasped. It's not the route. It's the tag misread. It's feeding the loop. Her heart raced. She added a new rule to her model. If same ID logs within 2 hours at different centers, flag for double confirmation before loop penalty triggers. She called it the ghost tag filter. Test run, 86% efficiency, no recursion on flagged paths. A smile spread across her face. She looked around. No one clapped, no one noticed, but something inside her lit up. It was working. She reached into her backpack and pulled out the red-marked envelope, the one that started it all. She flipped it over and wrote one word across the back, learning. Then, beneath it, in smaller letters, we don't fix loops by forcing new paths. We fix them by understanding why they repeat. By the time she walked home, her shoes were soaked from a sudden Miami rain. She opened the door, dripping, and found her mom in the kitchen, holding a single envelope. From the college, Elena said, eyes wide. Ava took it with shaking hands, tore it open. A note. A time. Final simulation presentation, Monday, 9 a.m. No classroom, auditorium. She looked at her mom. They want me to present it to everyone. Elena stared. Are you ready? Ava looked at her frayed pencil, the taped model, the ink-smudged receipts on the fridge. She nodded. I've never been more ready. The auditorium buzzed with murmurs. Rows of students, faculty, and logistics consultants filled every seat. Some leaned forward with curiosity. Others sat back with crossed arms, skeptical. At the front, a large screen showed a blank simulation grid, waiting. Ava stood behind the podium, the weight of her taped-together model in her backpack, the red-marked envelope tucked into her hoodie pocket. She looked down at the worn pencil in her hand, bitten, barely usable, but hers. She drew a breath. I'm Ava Rivera, she said. My mom delivers mail. That's how this started. The room shifted. I noticed certain packages kept rerouting. Same IDs, same loops. I built a model using recycled mail, thread, and time I didn't have. She clicked the mouse. The simulation loaded, her adapted framework over Harvard's routing system. Every node here, she continued, is weighted by behavior, not just speed. It learns which paths cause delays. It adjusts. A student raised a hand. Based on what? Delays? Behavior over time, Ava replied. It rewards correction. It penalizes memory bias. Someone laughed under their breath. She kept going. The core of the issue wasn't the routes. It was trust in bad data, like believing a path is safe because it used to work. She tapped the keyboard. The simulation ran. Node lights blinked. Red, amber, then green. The delivery web shimmered into motion. No recursion, no bottlenecks. Packages rerouted intelligently around flagged zones. Gasps echoed from the front row. One consultant leaned forward, eyes wide. Wait, did she just avoid the Richmond loop? Another whispered, that loop's been baked in for 6 years. Ava nodded. I call it the ghost tag filter. It catches repeat scans and delays rerouting until confidence is restored. Professor Monroe smiled faintly from the side of the stage. She did it, she whispered. The simulation stats appeared. Delay reduction 93%. Recursion rate near zero. A hush fell over the auditorium. Halverson stood slowly. He cleared his throat. She got lucky. One test doesn't prove anything. Ava looked at him. Then run it again. The room tensed. He hesitated, then nodded. The simulation restarted. Same input, same flow. The grid lit up again, fluid, efficient. Monroe stepped forward. Her model adapts. It's not just an overlay, it's a correction mechanism. The consultant in the front row raised his hand. Who wrote the original prediction script? Halverson paused. I did. A beat passed. The consultant turned to Ava. Would you consider licensing your model? Ava blinked. Sorry, what? Your model. Is it proprietary? She glanced at her backpack, the cereal box, the envelope, the bitten pencil. It's made of trash, she said. But yeah, I guess it is. Laughter rippled through the room, not mocking, amazed. Halverson's face remained tight. Then Monroe stepped beside Ava and addressed the room. Genius isn't about pedigree. It's about perspective. Ava saw something the rest of us overlooked because she started closer to the ground, where the problem lived. Ava whispered, "I did it." Her mom, standing near the back of the room, wiped a tear and nodded. "You did," she mouthed. The projector dimmed. The applause started slow, then swelled. Ava stood still, hand clutching the red-marked envelope. Proof. Persistence. A loop finally broken. The girl with no credentials, no lab, no grant, just grit and a pencil and the need to give her mom one less hour on the road. And now everyone saw it. The apartment was quiet again. No crowds, no projections, no voices echoing through an auditorium. Just Ava and her mom sitting across from each other at the kitchen table. The same table where she had drawn her first models on the backs of envelopes. The same table where dinners were skipped, replaced with thread, markers, and questions. Ava held the red-marked envelope between her fingers. It was soft now, worn from handling, almost fragile. "I didn't tell them everything," she said. Elena looked up. "You told them enough." Ava shook her head slowly. "They didn't hear why." She leaned back in the chair, eyes fixed on the ceiling like she was watching a memory play out above her. "Remember that winter 2 years ago?" she asked. "The one when the truck broke down?" her mom replied. "When I walked the last 6 miles?" Ava nodded. "I waited by the window that whole night. I thought something happened. You didn't text. You didn't call." Elena looked down at her hands. Her fingernails still carried flecks of ink from sorting slips earlier that day. "I couldn't. Phone was dead. It was pouring." "You got home after midnight," Ava said. "Your hands were shaking so bad you couldn't open the door." Elena smiled faintly. "You opened it for me." "I was scared," Ava whispered. "I thought, if this is what her job is doing to her, why isn't anyone fixing it?" Elena's eyes softened. "I kept thinking that night," Ava said. "There's gotta be a better way. There has to be." She pulled her worn pencil from her hoodie pocket, turning it slowly in her fingers. "That's when I started sketching. Not seriously, just little ideas. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just angry." She slid the envelope across the table. "This isn't just a broken root. It's a piece of that night." Elena reached for it, but paused. "I never knew," she said quietly. "I didn't want to say anything," Ava replied. "I thought maybe I was being dramatic." Elena smiled gently. "You weren't. You saw what I didn't have time to see." Ava looked at her mom, her voice cracking. "I'm not doing this for Harvard. I'm not doing it for awards or applause." She reached for the tape that still sat in the drawer. "I'm doing it because I want you to come home earlier. I want your hands warm, your shoes dry, your back rested." She picked up a fresh piece of paper, taped the envelope to the center, and wrote above it in bold marker, "You deserved better." Then below it, smaller, "So I built it." Elena reached over, wiped the corner of her eye. "You don't owe me anything, Ava." "I know," Ava said, "but I owe her, the woman who kept walking in the rain." The room stayed still. Outside, a postal truck rolled by. For once, it wasn't a reminder of a strain. It was a reminder of what had been changed. Elena whispered, "You've given us more than a model." Ava tilted her head. "You've given us rest." They sat in silence. The broken pencil rested on the table. The envelope was now framed in white. A new artifact, a new symbol. Ava breathed in, then looked up. Tomorrow, she said, I'm going back to Harvard. Elena raised her eyebrows. Already? They're asking for a detailed walkthrough, full explanation, diagrams, footnotes, all of it. She paused. I'm scared. Her mom smiled. Then you're ready. Ava reached for her folder, and this time it wasn't made of recycled cereal. It was new, but inside, taped to the cover, was the envelope, folded once, sealed with care and still marked in red. The hallway outside room 218 buzzed with whispers. Ava stood with her folder tucked under her arm, the red-marked envelope sealed inside. She wore the same hoodie, sleeves pulled over her palms. Familiar, safe. Professor Monroe approached from the side stairwell. They asked for you to come early, she said. But I don't like the tone. Ava nodded. I figured. Inside, the faculty conference room was full. Halverson sat at the head of the long table, arms crossed, papers stacked in front of him. 3 other professors flanked him. 2 grad students sat off to the side, whispering behind open laptops. Ava stepped in quietly. Monroe followed. Halverson didn't waste time. We've reviewed your presentation, he said, and while some of your results are intriguing, questions have been raised about the originality of your work. Ava's jaw tightened. What? One of the professors leaned forward. Your scoring method. It closely resembles a proposal submitted last year by a postdoc at MIT. I've never seen it, Ava said, voice steady. I built it on my own, based on what my mom experienced on her routes. Another professor added, and the ghost tag filter that mirrors an unpublished draft from a logistics firm we've worked with. Ava blinked. I didn't copy anything. I don't even have access to those papers. Halverson spoke again, calm and sharp. You've been given more visibility than any uncredentialed person we've seen in this department. That comes with the scrutiny. Monroe interrupted. She built that model from torn envelopes and cereal boxes. If you'd seen her work before the screen made it look clean, you wouldn't ask this. One of the grad students stood up. I just want to say, some of us are putting in years to get here. It's not fair that someone just walks in and gets an audience because their story sounds good. Ava turned toward him, voice low. Do you think I wanted this path? He didn't answer. I wasn't trying to take anyone's spotlight, she said. I just wanted my mom to get home earlier, and I found something that worked. That's it. She reached into her folder and pulled out the original, unclean version of her model, pages marked in pencil, with receipts still taped at the corners. This was my first version, she said, drawn on a cereal box, because I didn't have paper. I stayed up while my mom slept on the couch because she couldn't afford another hour on her feet. She paused, holding out the envelope. This was the loop that broke her route, and the one that made me start asking questions. The room went quiet. Halverson frowned. You need to understand, perception matters here. Ava nodded slowly. I do. That's why I'm standing here, and I'm not leaving just because it makes some people uncomfortable. Monroe stepped closer. Her work speaks for itself. If this were any other student, whiteboard, funding, lab access, you'd be calling it groundbreaking. The grad student muttered, Yeah, well, I still think someone fed her the answers. A voice came from the doorway. It was Elena. She held her mailbag in one hand, her ID still clipped to her collar. No one fed her anything, she said. Everyone turned. She used to sit on the floor while I sorted mail. She didn't have code. She didn't have books. She had patterns. In her head, every route I brought home, she broke apart like a puzzle. A beat. She found the flaw because she lived it. Ava looked down at her folder, the broken pencil tucked inside the spine. Then back up. They can question my background, my tools, even my story, but they can't erase what I found. Monroe nodded. Stand your ground, Ava. And for the first time in that room, Ava didn't feel like she was defending a theory. She was defending truth. The sun poured through the tall windows of the faculty presentation room, casting long rectangles across the polished floor. A projection screen flickered on, humming softly. At the front, Ava stood behind a podium once again, but this time the room was split. Half the seats held faculty, serious, skeptical. The other half, grad students, logistics reps, a few community members, watched with cautious hope. And in the front row, Elena sat in her Postal uniform, hands clasped tight in her lap. Ava laid her folder on the podium. Taped to the front was the red-marked envelope. She adjusted the mic, her voice a steady but quiet. Last week, I was accused of copying my work, of building on models I'd never seen. A few murmurs. I'm here to show you what they missed. She opened her folder and pulled out the original cereal box panel. It was torn along one edge, taped together in 3 places, faded marker bleeding into the fibers. This is the first thing I ever built. It's not fancy. It's not digital. But it's mine. She clicked the laptop. The screen displayed a time-coded diagram. Her original ghost tag filter, written in freehand, later replicated in the software used for testing. Then came the video. It showed Ava, weeks ago, sitting on her kitchen floor. Thread pinned across a corkboard. Post-it notes labeling delays. Audio from her phone recording herself thinking aloud. I don't trust Node F anymore, her voice said. If it loops again, I'm going to score it lower and reroute it manually. Gasps echoed through the room. Monroe stepped forward, holding up a printed timestamp sheet. These recordings were logged weeks before the postdoc model was published and before the logistics firm submitted their private proposal. She turned to Halverson. I reviewed the data. Every assumption, every metric originated in her kitchen using materials you would have thrown away. Halverson didn't speak. Another professor leaned back, rubbing his chin. She predicted the recursive pattern without access to the core simulator? Monroe nodded. And her scoring algorithm isn't derivative. It's intuitive. It's behavioral, not just technical. A student in the back raised a hand. So? It was her? Elena stood slowly. She never needed to steal from anyone. She had everything she needed from the moment she saw me come home at midnight soaked in rain. Ava looked up, voice quiet. I didn't build this in a lab. I built it because I couldn't stand watching her collapse on the couch. She lifted the envelope. This was the first failure I tracked. I followed it for 6 days, same package, same loop. Then she held up the pencil, worn, chewed, half length. This was the only tool I trusted. The room stilled. Another professor, silent until now, stood. I'd like to formally enter her model into the university's logistics archive as an original contribution. Halverson looked down at his papers, then stood. He faced Ava, eyes unreadable. I misjudged your work, he said, and I allowed bias to cloud my view of where insight can come from. Ava met his gaze. I didn't need your permission, she said, but thank you. A beat passed, then Monroe leaned toward her. They can't deny it now. The applause started small, then spread. Ava stepped away from the podium, walking toward her mom. Elena stood, wrapped her arms around her. You did it, she whispered. Ava looked over her shoulder, back at the screen. The envelope is still glowing under the projector light. I proved it. The sun filtered through the windows of Professor Monroe's office, casting soft light across the cluttered desk. Papers, printouts, and a single chipped mug filled with cold tea. Ava sat across from her, the envelope tucked into her hoodie again. The broken pencil rested on top of her folded hands. Monroe leaned back in her chair, quiet for a moment. They've accepted the model into the research archive, she said. Fully credited to you. Ava nodded slowly. I still don't feel like I belong here. You don't have to feel it yet, Monroe replied. You just have to show up again tomorrow. A knock tapped at the door. Monroe looked up. Come in. The door opened, and Halverson stepped inside. Ava stiffened, but he didn't speak right away. Instead, he closed the door behind him and pulled a single sheet of paper from his folder. This is from the department board, he said. It's a formal offer. Ava blinked. He placed it on the desk. We'd like to extend you a scholarship, not just to study, to collaborate. Monroe raised her eyebrows. Collaborate? She asked. Halverson nodded. Her model isn't just a correction, it's a foundation, a new way of thinking about adaptive systems. We want her voice in the lab, on paper, in the process. Ava stared at the document. You want me on the team? You've already contributed more than some graduate fellows, he said. I won't make excuses for how I handled things earlier. But if you'll let us, we'd like to build something real, together. Ava's voice cracked slightly. You believe in me now? Halverson nodded once. I do. She looked at Monroe, who smiled warmly. This doesn't erase this struggle, Monroe said, but it proves that you moved something bigger than numbers. Ava picked up the paper. Her name was printed cleanly at the top. Below it, terms she didn't fully understand yet, but they were hers. A door. I don't know what comes next, she whispered. That's the best part, Monroe replied. You get to build it. Halverson turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, he said. He pulled something from his folder, a copy of Ava's model. It was printed in full color, annotations intact, but at the bottom he had written a single line in pen, built from the ground up. He handed it to her. I think this belongs in the department library. She looked at the red envelope, still peeking from her hoodie pocket. I have a better idea. That evening, Ava stood in the small university gallery near the main hall. A new display had been set up. A clear case with a corkboard model inside. Thread lines, post-it notes. Worn cereal box cardboard. In the center, taped flat, was the red-marked envelope. Next to it, mounted beneath glass, was her broken pencil. She stood with her mom by her side, both of them in quiet awe. A small plaque read, Ava Rivera, Adaptive Routing Model, age 13. recycled paper, thread, pencil, persistence. Elena reached out and touched the edge of the case. You built this in the dark, she said softly. I just wanted you to rest, Ava whispered back. And now you've given rest to millions. Behind them, Monroe watched from a distance. Halverson approached quietly and stood beside her. She changed more than a model, he said. She changed us. Monroe nodded. And she's just getting started. The Harvard lawn shimmered under the late spring sun, a breeze drifting through the trees as folding chairs filled with faculty, students, and guests. A small platform had been set up beneath the arches of Jefferson Hall, trimmed with red and gold banners. At the center, a single microphone waited. Ava stood off to the side, tugging nervously at the sleeve of her navy blue jacket. Her hair was neatly combed, her shoes stiff from being worn only once before. Her mom stood beside her, straightening Ava's collar for the 5th time. I look okay, right? Ava asked. Elena smiled, holding back tears. You look like you've always belonged here. Ava breathed in slowly, clutching the folded letter in her pocket. The official scholarship notice. Full tuition, research stipend, housing, a place not just to visit, but to stay. Professor Monroe approached, holding a small envelope. They want you on stage in 5, she said softly. Ava nodded, her eyes wide. Is this really happening? Monroe smiled. You're the youngest student Harvard's ever accepted, she said. They're not giving you a favor. They're catching up. Ava swallowed hard. Behind her, she could see the glass case still set up in the hall window. Inside, her corkboard, her thread, the cereal box, the red-marked envelope, now laminated for preservation, and her pencil, still broken, still hers. She stepped onto the stage when her name was called. The applause started slow, then built. Not the polite claps of skepticism, but the full sound of recognition. She stood behind the microphone, heart pounding. My name is Ava Rivera, she began, voice shaking but clear. And I'm here today because if someone gave me a problem they thought couldn't be solved, the crowd leaned in. I didn't have a lab. I didn't have funding. I didn't even have clean paper. But I had envelopes. I had thread. I had my mom's pain, and that was enough. Her mom's eyes brimmed with tears in the front row. I didn't build a solution for grades or glory. I built it because I couldn't bear to watch someone I love break down one more day from a broken system. She paused. Today, I'm honored to accept this scholarship. But more than that, I'm grateful for every night I spent with a pencil and no answers. Because that's where the real learning happened. The crowd stood. A wave of applause rolled through the courtyard. Later that evening, Ava sat cross-legged in the corner of a study room. Her new ID badge hung from her neck. Her laptop buzzed with unread emails. But she wasn't looking at the screen. She held the original pencil in her hand, chewed, cracked, but steady. Her fingers turned it slowly as she whispered lines to herself. Node C, ghost tag active, loop risk high. She grinned. Then a knock at the door. It opened. Elena peeked in with a small cake box in hand. I didn't know what college kids eat after ceremonies. she said. So I brought chocolate. Ava jumped up and hugged her tight. I did it for us, she whispered. Elena kissed the top of her head. And now you're doing it for others. They sat together, sharing cake with plastic forks. The study room quiet, the future wide open. Ava looked down at her pencil, then toward the glowing campus outside. I'm not scared anymore, she said. Elena smiled. Because you belong? Ava shook her head. No, because I know I didn't wait for anyone to give me permission. She picked up a new envelope from her desk, unfolded it, and began sketching again. Another problem, another loop, another beginning. The Miami Community Center hummed with voices, postal workers, small business owners, volunteers. A banner stretched across the back wall read, "Optimizing routes, restoring lives." Ava stood near a table with a map of the city, color-coded pins marking routes. Her laptop displayed the latest update to her model, now officially adopted by 3 regional logistics hubs. Beside her, Elena handed out water bottles with the Postal Union badge stitched on her shirt. Clean pressed, no exhaustion beneath her eyes. I still can't believe it, one carrier said, walking up to Ava. My route bit is 30 minutes shorter. I see my kids before dinner now. Ava smiled softly. That's the point. Another woman leaned over the map. I used to skip lunch just to beat traffic downtown. Now I have time to breathe. The room filled with the stories. Fewer delays, less fuel, more rest. Ava stepped back and looked around. This wasn't Harvard, no awards or red carpets. But this mattered more. Later that evening, Ava sat on the hood of an old postal van parked behind the center. She looked up at the stars. The pencil, her pencil, still lived in her jacket pocket. Not to write, but to remind. Monroe joined her, balancing 2 cups of hot tea. They ran the model statewide, she said, handing one over. Early numbers say over 10 million saved. Ava stared ahead. That's not what I think about. What do you think about? A pause. That night, Mom walked 6 miles home, she said. How many others still do? Monroe sipped her tea. Well, not as many now. Ava turned, her voice quieter. But it's never really finished, is it? Monroe shook her head. No, it just becomes someone else's starting point. They sat in silence. Then a familiar voice called out, Hey, genius! Elena walked out from the center, waving her phone. Local news is calling it the Rivera Reform. Ava laughed. I didn't name it. Well, it's yours anyway. Weeks later, Ava visited one of the new training labs launched through her scholarship fund. It was small, no whiteboards, just old mail bins, computers, and a wall full of recycled diagrams sent in from rural carriers who had adapted her model by hand. One boy, maybe 12, looked up from a map. You're her, right? Ava smiled. I'm just Ava. He held up a paper full of scribbled paths and stamps. My mom drives trucks. I'm trying to fix her route too. Ava kneeled beside him. You will. He hesitated. Even without the fancy math. Ava pulled the broken pencil from her pocket and placed it on the table between them. This figured out half the system. His eyes widened. No way. Yes way, she said. Keep sketching. Back at Harvard, Ava passed by the glass display in the hall. Her red-marked envelope, the cereal box, the thread map, the pencil, the new plaque read, "The Rivera model created from recycled paper and relentless vision now used in 22 U.S. cities." She stood there a long time listening to the quiet hum of footsteps around her. She whispered, "This was never just for me," and walked on to the next problem, the next puzzle, and the next kid somewhere holding a pencil and asking, "What if there's a better way?" The rooftop was quiet. Harvard's brick towers stretched beneath a soft evening sky. Ava sat cross-legged near the edge, a worn hoodie over her shoulders, the broken pencil in her hands. She twirled it slowly, watching the sun dip below the skyline. Her bag rested beside her. Inside it, her notebook, her model updates, and a new envelope, blank, untouched, waiting. Footsteps approached. Monroe stepped into view, holding 2 mugs. "You always come up here alone?" Ava smiled faintly. "Not always, just when I'm thinking too loud." Monroe handed her a mug. "You've earned a little silence." Ava stared out at the campus below. Lights flicked on, one by one. People walking, books under their arms, phones pressed to ears. "It still feels strange," she said. Monroe tilted her head. "What does?" "Sitting here, while mom's still working, while others are still out there fighting systems that don't see them." She looked down at the pencil. "This used to be everything I had." "It still is," Monroe said. "Not the wood, the will." Ava turned, eyes soft. "I keep wondering, what if I can't keep up? What if I only had one good idea?" Monroe sat beside her. "You didn't just solve a problem, you changed a language." Ava raised an eyebrow. "Language?" "You taught us to listen differently, to think from below, not above." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Monroe added, "That's not a fluke. That's foundation." Ava nodded slowly. "I just wanted to help my mom sleep. But now—" She opened the new envelope, pulled out a blank page. "There's more." Monroe smiled. "Then write it, build it, name it." 2 weeks later, Ava walked into her new workspace, small but hers. A lab table, a corkboard already pinned with new strings, and an entire wall painted with a dry erase paint. She hung the framed pencil next to the door. Below it, a new sign, Loop Breakers Initiative Lead, Ava Rivera. She glanced at the desk. A stack of handwritten letters waited, not from CEOs or researchers, from students, mail workers, kids drawing maps on napkins, each one asking the same thing. "How do I fix the system where I live?" Ava picked up a letter from a boy in rural Arkansas. He had sketched a diagram in crayon. She smiled, then called out to her team, 2 undergrads and a postal analyst who had once been laid off from her route. "Pull up the routes near Route 82, Ava said. "We've got another loop forming." They gathered at the board. Ava started drawing. Different problem, same purpose. That night, back home, Ava and Elena sat on the porch. A gentle breeze moved through the street. The old mailbag sat folded at their feet, no longer heavy. Elena leaned back. You know, she said, I still can't believe they named it after you. Ava looked down at the stars. It's not about the name. She held up the blank envelope again. It's about where you're willing to deliver. Elena grinned. Spoken like a Rivera. Ava smiled. Yeah, but not the last one. She stood, walked to the edge of the porch and looked ahead. Streetlights, delivery vans, open doors. She whispered, talent isn't where you deliver, it's where you dare to direct. Then she turned, envelope in hand, and walked back inside. The loop was broken, and the road ahead wide open.